A signalman claims to see a ghost. Is it on-the-job nerves or a spooky omen? I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. It is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about some interesting short form literature from a well-known author, at least in Western literature. Today's story is all about a ghost sighting. I am referring to The Signalman by Charles Dickens, which was published in 1866. For those who don't know, Charles Dickens, and a lot of people might know who Charles Dickens was, but for those who don't, Charles Dickens was a British author who lived throughout the 1800s. He wrote quite a bit of short stories and actual books. He's well known for A Christmas Carol, Oliver Twist, Tale of Two Cities, among many other stories. And I've read a couple of his, especially for in high school, but I haven't read anything for this channel apart from this short story. Some of his earlier work was not well regarded in his time, some of his later work was not well regarded in his time, but with time after his death, people have praised him, reappraised him, and he's been sort of one of the top British writers out there, a real well-regarded writer in his time. However, much like other writers of his time, he was not without claims of racism in his writings or in his own viewpoints. Apparently, he sided with the Confederacy at one point, or he just didn't believe that the Union actually wanted to abolish slavery, so he just decided to support the Confederacy. Not vocally. He was going to come out vocally, but he never ended up doing that, which just goes to show that the writers at the time were not the most morally superior or morally fit people. Although at the time the racism was aplenty, that didn't necessarily make it okay. And so it's important to call that racism out, even in authors who are long dead. But without further ado, let's talk about The Signalman. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Signalman focuses on an unnamed narrator who's just walking about in a sort of rural area when he encounters a railroad signalman. A signalman is someone who stands near a railroad tunnel, presumably signaling to someone outside the railroad tunnel in an effort to make sure the trains don't crash or something like that. And he says hello to the railroad man in a specific way. And the signalman has like a strange reaction. It seems to unsettle him, but he doesn't relay what the fears that he's feeling or what's bothering him initially. He returns to the signalman's home and talks with him and sees that the signalman lives an interesting life, reading books and doing math and all sorts of things like that. But the narrator, as they talk more with the signalman, they're clearly scared about something, but they don't want to talk about it. And the signalman says, I'll tell you if you see me tomorrow. We'll talk about it. And the next day, the signalman and the narrator meet again. And the signalman talks about a ghost that he's been seeing as of late. The signalman talks about how in the past there have been sightings of a ghost and disaster has followed. And for the past couple nights, he's seen the same ghost doing a strange sort of motion at him, sort of covering his eyes. And when the narrator called to him initially, he thought the narrator was a ghost. And so he's just feeling this spine-chilling worry. And the narrator thinks, it's just mere hallucinations, but the signalman isn't quite so sure about that. And he thinks, I might as well get this guy some help when I get a chance. But as the story comes to a close, the narrator goes to see the signalman the next day, but finds that the signalman was hit by a train and died. And the train driver and other people are relaying how he died, and the manner of his death resembles the premonitions that the man experienced when he was seeing the ghost. And so the narrator, as the story comes to a close, just notes that it might have been premonition, but he'd rather leave it up to the reader because it's too eerie to think about, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit worth thinking about with this story. The main idea, the main premise of the story focuses on supernatural omen. The signalman sees visions of horrible things to come in the form of a ghost, and mainly he doesn't know that it's horrible things to come. We later find out that it's horrible things to come, but he sees ghosts and he thinks that this is a sort of a premonition. That ghosts were seen before accidents in other cases, and so he wonders what kind of accident is coming up. Specifically, at one point in the story, he's like, "What does it all mean? Tell me. I can't think of anything else. This is bothering me. What does it mean?" To which the narrator just responds, "Oh, it's nothing. You're probably hallucinating. You live a very solitary life. You're probably under too much stress, and it's nothing." I imagine the signalman job is pretty stressful and isolating too, which I'll get to in a few moments. But all of that might produce some stress, which the narrator isn't wrong for thinking might affect him. But then the next day we see the signalman has died, and the manner of his death, where the signalman reported seeing a ghost that was like covering his face. The man who hit the signalman was also covering his face, and the narrator said hello there when he initially greeted the signalman, which the signalman responded with a strange reaction because that's what the ghost was also doing, or like a manner of saying hello. And when the signalman died, the last thing he really heard was "hello there" from down the tunnel. So kind of a ghostly premonition of things to come. And the narrator is really reflecting all of that. Is this just merely coincidence, or is it a supernatural omen, a portent of this man's inevitable death? Like Dickens leaves it up to the reader, but it's a very spooky thought, like of wondering if your death could be foretold, and would you even be able to see the signs if it were coming, and would you be able to avoid it? Maybe not. That's certainly a scary thing to think about there. And Dickens also adds more to the horror atmosphere in this story. You see the nighttime encounters with the narrator feeling a chill as they're talking to the signalman, so a bit spooky right there. But you also see the isolation of the signalman job, a job of years past, which probably doesn't exist anymore, of a signalman just sitting outside of a train tunnel waiting for the signal from another signalman in order for them to do their job and make sure no accidents happen. But this job is very isolating because you're not really around other people. You can't get distracted, and there's nothing to focus on but the quiet of your surroundings. And that might lead to you hallucinating. That might lead to, instances where you see stuff that you can't quite explain, and it's very unsettling, and it might lead you to sort of try to rationalize it, or even like irrationalize it by ascribing like supernatural meaning to it. So I think Dickens does a good job of sort of building up this horror atmosphere here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Signalman by Charles Dickens. It's a pretty short story, even though it's like 12 pages. Not a lot really happens in it apart from the signalman explaining the horrifying things going on in his life. I think it's an okay short story. Dickens has clearly written a lot better, but as a horror story, to tell around a campfire, it might be a bit fun. But if you were wanting something deeper in your horror, maybe you might have to look elsewhere. But this is still pretty important to read, given that it comes from Dickens. If you've read any of his longer stories, you might want to check out one of his shorter, short stories. So go do that. I'll put a link to it in the description. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this author if they don't already know, or this short story, which they probably might not know because, again, his books are more well known. But until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and railroad travels. Farewell.